Hi, I'm Alicia Michelle, and as a trained and certified Christian mindset coach, I've helped hundreds of Christian women discover brain science-based mindset tools to help them grow closer to God and break free from anxiety, perfectionism, people-pleasing, and feeling like they're never enough. The Christian Mindset Coach is the award-winning podcast that shows you how to use simple brain science principles and biblical truth to renew your mind for lasting confidence, joy, and peace. I'm so glad you're here. Grab a cozy spot and let's get started. Hey, welcome to today's episode of the Christian Mindset Coach with me, Alicia Michelle. This episode on sharing our emotions with our spouse, this is a topic that I wish someone would have sat me down and spoken to me about as a young married woman. I wish I could have a conversation with my younger self, really, truly. My husband and I are about to celebrate 24 years of marriage, and I've just been looking back at some of the ways we've changed. And one of the biggest ways that I personally have grown emotionally in marriage is I've learned the very fine art of knowing when to share my emotions with my husband and when to keep my emotions between me and God. So I want to first say that this is not an episode about hiding emotions from your husband or being secretive or being in any way untrue about your feelings that you're having in marriage or just in life. I am 100% for transparency in marriage and for sharing things together as a couple. However, I'm talking about learning to discern when it's helpful to take what we're feeling and to share them outside of what we're going through, outside, meaning with the other person, outside of what we share with God. In the book Emotional Confidence, I teach that emotions can be these wonderful ways for us to connect with God and to grow in our relationship with Him. I share that emotions are healthy. They're these check engine lights for our souls. And I also say that we don't have to let emotions guide our future. And at the same time, we don't have to squash our emotions or hold them back. However, what we need to work on is once we do identify these emotions, that they're real and they're happening, it's very easy, especially if these emotions are involving another person in a relationship like a spouse, it's very easy for these emotions to just come spewing out and for us to start blaming and attaching responsibility for what we're feeling to someone else. And truth be told, sometimes those emotions that we're feeling that are coming out, they are the result of someone else's careless words, poor actions. There could truly be toxic behavior. And we're not saying that those things aren't things that need to be called out. In fact, we just did an episode recently on, am I in a toxic relationship? And I talked about several signs of overdependence in a relationship, of toxicity. So we do need to be aware of those things. And I encourage you to check that episode out if you're not sure what's going on. But I have found a lot of times in marriage that there are things that I'm feeling specifically, like loneliness, emptiness, sadness, that have to do with my own self-worth, that honestly, they're not issues in my marriage, that instead, they are emotions that I need to bring to the Lord and work through with Him. And many times, if I'm trying to share in the heat of the moment, there's that emotion and there's all kinds of distortions about truth, which was what emotions can do, then it really caused more damage than health to my relationship. So what I've found and what I want to share with you today is kind of my tried and true way of working through emotions in marriage. It's not very complicated, but I feel like it is extremely helpful. And again, I wish somebody had sat me down and talked to me about it years ago. And then also kind of, when do we share? How do we share what's healthy, what's not about our emotions in there? The main principle that I want to share is that I would highly encourage you to go to God first with your emotions, okay? When you're feeling something in marriage, especially. There's all kinds of scriptures, I don't want to even get into them, about how God cares about our feelings, how He's close to the brokenhearted. He loves us so much. He's compassionate for us. But the benefits of bringing our emotions to God first is first, clarity. God can help us discern the root cause of what we're feeling. Healing, it prevents us from putting unnecessary blame on others or
attaching past wounds to a current situation. And it brings peace. It allows us to release these emotional burdens to God and receive His wisdom before responding. We can go into a conversation, should He encourage us to have that, to bring these feelings up with our spouse, we can go into that conversation with a peaceful, reconciled attitude before God instead of a combustive, overly emotional state that starts just blaming everyone and everything. So the key point again, is that our emotions are powerful tools, but they have to be filtered through God's truth before we share them with others. So an example of this, it's kind of an ongoing situation in my marriage. My husband is a very quiet, kind of deep thinker kind of a guy. He is someone who likes space by himself, likes to read books, likes to have his alone time. And I have 3 other children who actually have the same kind of personality. So I think the Lord wants me to learn about this personality and living with people like this. But I am someone who enjoys more interaction with other people, who wants to go out, who's more spontaneous. And my husband can be someone who doesn't say a lot of words and a lot of times doesn't want to go out. And I've had to learn over the years that if I suggest something and I'm like, hey, let's go do this, and he says, I really don't want to, or he kind of pushes back on it, that it's not a personal attack on me. It's not him not wanting to spend time with me. It's not him wanting to just dislike even the activity. It's just, for whatever reason, he is not at a place where it's something that he can participate in or wants to participate in, but it's not about me. That's the important part, because I was attaching all kinds of, he doesn't like me, he doesn't want to spend time with me, he's this, 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 this. The other thing that comes up for us a lot because of this quiet nature of him is that he doesn't always have a lot to say. Now, again, he can say, if he's listening to this, you can say a lot, honey, sometimes. But there are times when he's just more quiet. He's that guy in our Bible study on Wednesday nights who doesn't necessarily have a comment, but when he has a comment, it's like, wow. He's like, says that one thing that you're like, that's deep, So me being a very verbal person, someone who's like, I just want to share everything that I'm feeling right now, blah, 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 and I'm expressing all of it. When I do that and I don't feel like he's giving that back to me, I can very easily personalize it and make it about me. Something wrong with me. He doesn't like me. He's mad at me. There's something wrong with our relationship. I can start adding all this stuff to it. And I did, honestly, in the first parts of our marriage. But I have learned to say a simple phrase, which maybe you need a simple phrase for you if this is kind of an ongoing thing, whatever your situation is in your marriage. But I've learned to ask a simple phrase or ask a simple question of my husband. And I just say, is this a quiet day for you? And he will usually say, yes, this is just a quiet day. And so what that gives is the ability for him to say, I'm being quiet. This is part of my personality. I need some space. Has nothing to do with you, Alicia. Because in the past, there had been other relationships in my life where when people were quiet, it meant they were punishing me. They wanted to express without expressing it that they were unhappy with me. And so that is where my brain instantly goes to if I don't have that kind of a feedback from someone. So again, that's a me issue. That's not a marriage issue. That's a me issue. And so by having that kind of a question to kind of check in, or going to God first about it and saying, God, is this something that's me or him? It has made such a difference and really saved a lot of these kind of, especially in these ongoing kind of issues we face in marriage. It's saved a lot of that runaround stuff that we do. Another aspect of this, of course, we just talked about personalization, that these are some of these emotional traps we can get into and why it's so important to go to God first. But another kind of emotional trap that can happen is these unrealistic expectations. And that is expecting your spouse to meet an emotional need that either only God can fill, or honestly, that someone else in your life, God may be bringing into your life to fill in that capacity. Once again, I have struggled with this. The first part of expecting my spouse to meet all my emotional needs, I think in this culture, we've all grown up with this idea of a man, when I get married, he's going to be my knight in shining armor. He's going to be the one who brings me flowers every day and just says all these beautiful things. And if he doesn't, culture's kind of like, well, then get rid of him and find someone else. There's something wrong with him. When in reality, yes, there's romance. Yes, there's these things. But that's ultimately a core need for being loved and being significant and being valuable. That comes from God. That comes from God. And if we expect our spouse, even in these ways that maybe we don't realize, if we expect that to start happening, there's going to be issues. There's going to be that imbalance. And the second part of that, when I said sometimes other friends can fill some of these needs that we have that a spouse can't. I have friends who really enjoy painting or drawing or cooking or going on long walks by the beach, things like that. These are all things that my husband doesn't like. These are all things that aren't his thing. Like, he will go with me on a walk by the beach, but he really, to be honest, he hates the beach. Yes, he's like the only human alive who hates the beach, but that's a whole other story. He doesn't really like it. That's torturous to him to go there. So I really like going to the beach. I love being by the ocean. It makes me really happy. So I have learned that I call on a girlfriend to go for a walk at the beach. I take the kids with me to the beach to hang out because it ain't his thing. And there are times when as a family we'll go, and it doesn't mean that he doesn't ever go or do that, of course. But do you hear what I'm saying? I'm not saying like, these are all the needs and all the likes that I have, and we're supposed to participate in all of them. And that was me, honestly, whether I would have expressed that in the beginning of our relationship, but I think that's kind of the expectation that I had. And wow, that is a recipe for disaster. So by processing these emotions with God, we're able to identify, is this issue really about the spouse, or is it really something deeper within me that I'm needing, or that a need that I can get fulfilled from somewhere else, or just even with the Lord himself. So some questions to ask when we're processing with the Lord through these emotions that we're feeling. There's 3 good questions that we can ask. Number 1, is this emotion rooted in past wounds? Is it something that is triggering a direct wound or a situation that has happened? Is it directly related to my spouse? Those are the 2 things. Is it directly related to my spouse, or is it a past wound? That's a great place to start to kind of differentiate. And second, will sharing this emotion, will it bring connection and understanding, or is it going to create unnecessary tension? This question is really important because if you've been married a long time, you know that there are these little ongoing, they're not even arguments. They're just things that can be annoying, I guess is a good word, that are about that other person that, yeah, I could bring it up all the time, but why? It's just who this person is or how they are. And it's not necessarily, again, it's not evil. It's not toxic. It's not bad. It's just annoying. So here's an example. In my house, again, we live in Southern California and we live fairly close to the ocean. So we don't turn on our air conditioning very often. By the grace of God, it's nice. We have this beautiful breeze that comes up. We open the windows. We're good. My husband is way more sensitive to that and likes to turn the air conditioning on more than I do. And there are days where just like, it is not that hot in here. Why are we turning the air on? Like, we don't need to turn the air on. And so there was one phase in our marriage where he would turn the air on. And then I'd be like, it's so cold in here. What is the matter with this thing? And I would turn it off or I'd turn it down. And he's like, it's so hot in here. Why is it so hot in here? And he'd turn it up. And it was just like, I'm going to go turn it down. Those kind of silly things that happen that I was like, oh my word. So now when summer comes, I'm like, you know what? If he wants to turn the air on, it is just not a big deal. Don't make a thing about it, Alicia. Who cares? It's not a big deal, right? And I know there are things about me that they're just me that he's kind of like, I'm going to bring this up because this is just her. This is how she is. And I, try to be aware of them. For one thing, I wake up talking. I wake up like, hey, I'm so excited about this today. And I had a stream about this, blah, 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 right? I know that's shocking to you listening to me be on this podcast and talk right now, but that's me. So when I get up and I'm talking like that, again, my husband, it's not that he's not a morning person. It's not that he isn't awake. He actually is pretty awake and alert and able to talk, but he's not going to be the one who's like, oh my gosh, you're right. I had this great dream too. And I'm so excited. Let's go talk to the kids about this. Like, and sometimes I have this expectation, like that's what's going to happen. And so again, he has to kind of have patience with me. And I have to kind of be aware, like, okay, just tone it down a little in the morning sometimes if he's looking a little extra tired. And he can be like, she can be really excited in the morning and that's just how she is. I'm going to give her grace. And that really is the basis for what I think is this balance here, is that verse that says, make allowance for each other's faults, making allowance for each other to be imperfect, giving space for there to be even seasons where a spouse is going through something hard. And again, I used to be so much about like, it has to be fair. Like, you need to know that this is bothering me. You need to know that this is happening. And okay, again, we need to be aware of what's happening in our relationships, but God has shown me, bring it to me first, and I'll let you know if you need to bring it up with him. Okay. I'll let you know. You will be taken care of in this situation. Just in conclusion, taking our emotions to God, it not only is going to deepen our relationship with God if we bring it to him first, it's also going to protect and strengthen our marriage. There's another verse in Song of Solomon that talks about keep out the little foxes that are coming in to steal the grapes from the vineyard. There's all these little opportunities for those foxes to come in and steal our marriages. And we have to be vigilant and aware of what those things are. Not ignoring big situations that are coming up. Like, we have to discern that with the Lord. Like, is this a pattern in our marriage that we really need to talk about or we need to pray about together? Like, I'm concerned about this behavior that I'm seeing in my spouse. Like, those are not things to ignore, but there are things that we need to bring before the Lord first, because even if it is some sort of thing, maybe addressing it at a different time or addressing it in a different way, God may tell you to just keep processing with him about it and may tell you to come at that at a different time in your marriage or next week, or being aware of these other things. God knows how to help us direct and work through these emotions that can come up. And then also, again, this grace that we give each other, the ability to be emotionally imperfect in those moments without instantly it turning into this blame game or you always blah, 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 giving each other space to do that. It gives us empathy because we know that we have bad days, bad moments, and it just might need to be given some space around it, right? It's important. It's an important part of showing love. Again, I think for a long time, I was very much focused on, in a relationship, you need to know everything that I'm feeling, and it needs to be absolutely fair. Like, you need to treat me right. And if there's any problems that you're not treating me 100,000% the way I believe, emphasis on I believe you should treat me, then we need to talk about it. When God has shown me you are an imperfect person looking at this relationship, married to an imperfect man who is doing his best overall to love you, to love your kids, and let's give him some space around this, or this is the other thing, let me talk to him about this. God's saying that, so many ways that these things can be worked through, but the enemy comes to steal, kill, and destroy everything of value in our lives. And most importantly, our relationships with God and our relationships that are most important to us, our marriages, our family. So we got to be aware, friends, if these emotions, which are okay to have, okay to express, but if they are getting in the way and how we're expressing them and working through them, they're literally hurting our relationships, then we have to do something different about it. And one of the best places to start is simply by bringing it to the Lord and letting him help you work through it first before you decide what to do with it. So I'm curious, have you seen this to be true in your relationships with your husband or a friend, where if you bring it to the Lord first, things work out better? Do you have a specific question about what it means to bring it to the Lord? Like, how do you do that? How do you do that when there's this ongoing issue that's really draining you? I mean, been there for sure. Like, we all have in long marriages. So let's dialogue about this. Let's keep talking about this topic. reach out to me on Instagram. It's at Alicia Michelle Coach. And I would love to talk to you about this. You can comment on one of the posts that we have there, or you can send me a direct message. And I would love to have a conversation with you about it. Also, if this episode or any of the episodes that you listen to here are helpful, or you think of like, gosh, my friend so-and-so needs to hear this, please forward it to them. Please share these episodes because you know people that need this information that I don't know. So if you can help get that information into their hands, it helps them and it helps us tell more people about the work that we're doing on the podcast here. So take care, friend. I'm excited to continue this conversation. A part 2 we're going to be doing next week of, okay, so now if I do have to talk to my spouse about it, how do I do that? How can I do that in a helpful way? We're going to talk about that next week. Take care. Bye-bye.
Thanks for joining me today for the Christian Mindset Coach. If you loved today's show, would you take 2 seconds and share a 5-star rating and review on Apple Podcasts? I've got a special gift for you when you share a review, my amazing 50 I Am declarations, 50 statements and Bible verses about who you are in Christ. This is an audio meditation and a written statement that is extremely popular with my clients, and I want to give you access just for sharing your Apple Podcast review. Simply screenshot your review and send it to hello@vibrantchristianliving.com, and we'll send you the link to access the 50 I Am Declarations resource. Thanks so much for sharing your rating and review so that we can get the word out about the podcast. See you back here next week.